Welcome back to the Rodcast. We like to call it the Hump Day edition of the Rodcast. Glad you guys can join us. We got a lot to get into on the show today. Of course, lots of Texas football discussion. The college football playoff rankings came out last night. We'll discuss the Longhorns and where they are ranked in the latest college football playoff rankings, where they have the Longhorns seeded in the college football playoff rankings, and what the college football playoff committee is trying to say with the latest rankings. We'll dive into that here coming up here momentarily. We'll also get into some of the other college football action happening this weekend. We'll preview Texas versus Arkansas a little bit. We'll go behind the burnt orange curtain and do that next segment. We'll also talk a little bit about the Texans. I would say the upset majority right now of Texans fans with the way the offense is going. They seem to be clamoring for Bobby Slowick's job a little bit. Seems to be a lot of folks out there saying that Bobby Slowick right now may need to be demoted. We'll talk about that, get into it a little bit, and give you some of the numbers about that conversation and debate. We'll also talk about the Cowboys a little bit, because the Texans are playing the Cowboys. We'll preview that matchup. Jerry Jones once again trying to justify his decision to build the stadium in a way that has the sun as basically an impediment to the production of the Cowboys offense. We'll talk about that. He actually had something to say on 105.3 The Fan. We'll also get into some other discussion about NFL games this weekend. You got 3 big games this weekend. Commanders versus Eagles. That's a huge game. You got the Chiefs versus the Bills, another big game, and Ravens versus the Steelers is another big game. We'll start to preview those a little bit coming up later on this show. We'll also dive into some of your favorite topics, of course, your favorite usual customary show items like what Roger Rant. We'll also get into who said that. We'll also get into off the record, what the facts, what the stats, loaded on the show today as usual. Texas basketball, even with a big win, the men's basketball team with an Old Testament style butt whipping over Chicago State. We can dive into that a little bit and talk about the freshman phenom Trey Johnson. Before we do any of that, let's introduce you to the rest of the crew. He's one of the hardest working members of the Aryan family. Got a hustler spirit, period. Don't know what he's paid, but pretty damn sure the man is underpaid. Ain't no 401k for this hustler, and he's a hustle man of many talents. It's our friend, co-host, and neighbor. It is Patrick Davis, y'all. What's going on, Patrick? How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. I was enjoying watching that Texas game last night. That was fun to watch. Especially the first half was a lot of fun to watch. I'm always enjoying that some. And, we went back to the NBA Cup, and still the ugly courts. Still not great courts. So
you don't like the courts? Are they the same courts or just different ugly courts?
I couldn't tell you if they're the exact same, but I feel like some teams may have changed theirs to be less egregious of the color, and some kind of went to grayish, more gray. Yeah. And then have the outline still a color, but they are different courts. But yeah, some of them are still way too bright for my taste. But but it's going to be what it is.
It's not for you. Just remember.
It's not for me. It's also, I also saw the part where I kept seeing their sponsorships tagged, and you're like, I don't know. There's so much money tied up in this that they have to make it like, if we don't change the court, nobody knows it's something different. So we have to change the court so that when people just see it, they go, what is this? And then you go, it's the whatever NBA.
That's a good point. It might not even be for anybody but the sponsors. As long as the sponsors like it, who gives a damn about everybody else? That's a great part. The NASCARification of the NBA continues to happen.
Yes,
that is something. Yeah, no doubt. I'm with you. And I don't watch enough early NBA to be upset about it, or to be annoyed by it, I should say. But yeah, I get you. Yeah.
No, it's not. It's not even that. It's not even that annoying. It's just literally you turn on the TV and you're like, why are we doing this? Come on, guys. Wait, how is this? How is this
different? Because it's got to be different than the regular season. And you got to make it different. Like, not only because it's the NBA Cup, but like psychologically, when you watch it, even as a fan, it's like, it's different. Why is it different? No. Well, it's different for a lot of reasons. It's different. Why is the court different? Well, it's different because the courts are different during the NBA Cup. Blah, blah, blah. So they want to psychologically program.
Oh yeah, no, and again, they want to do it for people who don't watch a lot of basketball, so that you blatantly know that courts don't look like that.
Yes, true.
As opposed to if you just change a court and made it look something cool, then they may be like, oh well, that's is that different, or is that how they all do it now? Like, no, exactly. Clearly this is not how it's done now.
This is not how you do it at all. This is totally different than a regular NBA game, and I think that's what they want to get across. You know what? I think it's working. It's working.
I mean,
must admit, it feels different to you, don't it? Just watching, just looking at it.
I mean, it feels worse.
Do they play different? Well, yeah, because you don't like the courts. But how is the actual play? Do the players? Do they play differently in the NBA Cup?
Once you get further into it, I think they do more.
Matters more.
But those early ones, when everyone's just like, well, we're just trying to win games anyway.
Yeah.
So it changes once it's like, well, we're 3-1, and maybe we could, advance or. I think once you get into that conversation, it changes a little bit. Or we're 0-3, so who cares? Let's just take the night off.
Yeah,
this game doesn't really matter to us as much. So I think there's a little bit once you get into it, but the beginning games are still. It was a bigger story. The Mavericks game, the bigger story was Klay Thompson was back in Golden State.
Yeah.
That was the bigger story than it being the NBA Cup. So,
of course.
So you could have different parts of it that are still entertaining. But yeah, I think the early NBA Cup games are still. It's early for basketball and everything. So
it is.
So if you put that in there and you're like, this is a thing that's happening in December. If it's like, all right, well then do it in December. We'll get closer.
Yeah. You could do it, but then,
I'm not upset about how they do it.
But the whole point is they need to make people pay attention to.
No, I get why they do it. I'm not upset. It's just interesting, but you're like the early games, you're trying to get up for it, and it's not really as big of a thing.
Yeah, they're trying to make it happen, and it's not.
Yeah,
it's not.
It's not quite. Yeah. Not quite.
It's not quite there. Yeah. It's still early though. It's still early. It's the first, second year of it, so early. Get some traditions going and stuff like that.
Let me introduce my co-host. He's a proud alumni of DBU. He's got more papers than Dunder Mifflin and watches more film than Siskel and Ebert. He is a new Rod, father of Austin Sports Radio, Mr. Rod Babers.
All right. Thank you for the intro, brother. I appreciate that. But we'll get to the college football playoff rankings here in just a second. We'll discuss those here. Also, if I want to get Patrick's thoughts about the Texas basketball team, their big win. I know he watched it, so I want to get his thoughts about how the team looks. We'll also get into some Texans discussion. Like I said, seems like a lot of people clamoring for Bobby Slowick's job. Seems like they came out of nowhere. I swear we were just perfectly fine with Bobby Slowick a month ago. And now the majority of opinions are like, Bobby Slowick's got to go. Who are they going to hire to be Bobby Slowick's place? I'm like, really? Are we, Jared? I'm like, we're already there? I thought it's fine to entertain, and talk about it and have the discussion, but it seems like a lot of people have made their mind up already that they got to move on from Bobby Slowick. And I don't think I'm there yet, but I did say, and I'll actually read a quote from my man Chris Sims because he said something very similar. I've said on this show, I said he is too much of a strict. He seems to be kind of a very his version of the offense is a very strict interpretation of Shanahan's offense, and he needs to make his own cover version of it. He needs to basically put his own spin on it, and he needs to have his own interpretation of it. But his is a very strict interpretation of Shano's, offense, and you can't run Shano's offense because you can't call it like he does. Yeah, he is a brilliant play caller and a play designer. So you may have all the concepts and you may have the signatures and you may have the basically, in terms of the protocol of the offense, you got all of those things. And I'm not doubting at all he has that. But I don't know if he has the play calling acumen yet because he just started calling plays last year. That was his first year calling plays. Yeah. So I don't think he has the experience or the acumen yet to be able to be what I call the chess master. All right. And play chess as a play caller. I don't think he's yet there. I think he's more of an offensive coordinator still than a play caller. And that's fine. He'll get there. But I don't think Texans fans are willing to allow him to learn on the job, I guess. That's kind of where we are now.
No, we can hire Shane Waldron, and then they'll be.
Wow. Yeah, that guy's got some experience, doesn't he? Doesn't necessarily mean you go get the job done. No. But yeah, it does seem like there's a lot. So we'll talk about it. There are some numbers that are damning indictment, I guess, of Bobby Slowick and his philosophy. But like I said, I think he ultimately has to be brave enough and courageous enough to really start to forge his own identity as someone from that McShanahan tree, but still not be such a strict kind of McShanahan disciple. I think he's a little too I really do. I think he's a little too devoted to those principles. Because you don't have that multiplicity and you don't have that play calling, like I said, acumen and that play calling brilliance, if you will, that Shanahan does. I mean, the guy grew up in a household where he was play designing plays when he was like 12 years old. I mean, it's just a little different. So I think for Bobby Slowick, he's got to take that into account. I'm not saying Bobby Slowick doesn't have that in him to be a great play caller and a play designer, but I do think he's got to go his own way here. And I do think people have figured out his version of that Shanahan offense. They have figured it out because it's not very imaginative and it's not very creative. And the most successful offshoots or the most successful disciples from the Mick Shanahan coaching tree, they really do make it their own. They put their own spin on it. They take the basic concepts and the basic principles, but then they spin it in their own direction. I mean, Sean McVay is the best example of it. They literally, now he has his own version of that offense, and I don't even know how connected it is really to the Shanahan offense anymore, right? Shanahan runs 21. He's strictly 11 personnel all the time. He's one of those guys that's now running a lot of power and a lot of duo. Shanahan is the zone blocking scheme. He really has gone his own way. And I think that is the lesson. It's like, use that to build your foundation. But then after that, you gotta put your own spin on it, your own cover version of that offense. And then by the time you're done weaving your own, imaginative ideas and adding your own, different concepts probably that you've siphoned from other coaches around the league, it won't even look like Shanahan's. It won't be anything close to it. Mike McDaniel's got I think he's still working on his version of it.
Yeah.
He's probably a little too strict to it too. He's taking a pony package version of it with 2 back sets a lot of times. He's emphasized speed as opposed to multiplicity. So he's taking I'm going to build my offense around this specific trait. And Shanahan's trait is multiplicity. So he does have it. I say he's better at having his own spin on it than Bobby Slowick is.
But I think both of those guys suffer from early success, leading them to be too stubborn in what they're doing.
That could be true. Yep.
Where both of them, wherever they believe it's their own system or whatever else, but the early success of, well, you saw what I did when I first came in, so this works. It's you guys, because this works.
Yeah.
And you go, but the world evolved to it. The NBA, the NFL world evolved to what you were doing, so you have to keep changing and shifting and pushing a new pattern. No, but this works, though. It worked. See? Here's the proof that it worked.
Yeah, it worked.
Yes, exactly. So I think there's a piece of that where it's you have to be one step faster than everybody else and one step quicker, and you're not right now. Right now, you're getting lapped because you're still running the same things, and they can look at film from last season and tell you what you're going to do this season. And you don't have the history behind yourself and the years of doing it to get it to a system that's unbeatable. Things worked when they didn't know what was coming. Now everybody knows what's coming. You got to keep changing it up. And I think both those guys, somewhat, when you don't have the perfect personnel to put in there, which, I mean, we see with Shanahan at points when he gets injuries and the offense slows down because he doesn't have the right personnel in there. You're just normally not going to have the right personnel for 17 games a season.
Yeah, but your ability to adjust to that personnel, that's what makes you a great play caller.
Yes.
In my opinion.
100%.
And I think that's something that Bobby Slowick's suffering with. So we'll get to some numbers about that too, because the Shane Waldron, I think, firing got a lot of people riled up, looking at their offense and saying, hey, man, the Texans might need to, they might need to shake something up before the season is over. So we'll get to that conversation. We'll also talk Texas. Of course, we'll introduce you to the Razorbacks, the key figures in that matchup on the Razorback side of things. We'll dive into that when we go behind the Burn curtain. But first, let's hit the Horn headlines. Let's get updated, educated, and informed with all the top stories of the day. Then we'll come back and discuss the college football playoff rankings. But first, the Horn headlines with Patrick Davis.
All right, your Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the NBA Cup group play began last night with all games on Tuesday and Friday for the rest of the month dedicated to the in-season tournament. Klay Thompson scored 22 and hit 6 3-pointers in his return to Golden State, but the Mavericks still came up short 120-117 as Steph Curry stole the show with 37 points and a last-minute 3 to help win the game. Tonight, the Spurs host the Wizards and the Rockets take on the Clippers. In college basketball, the Longhorns took care of business in a 105-58 win over Chicago State. Trey Johnson led the game with 19 points, and Zarek Onyema added 18 more off the bench. The men are back in action Saturday at 4 against Mississippi Valley State. Number 19 Kentucky knocked off number 6 Duke last night 77-72. Cooper Flagg had 26 points and 12 rebounds, but solid shooting for the Wildcats spurred a second-half comeback. Texas women's basketball play tonight against Lamar, looking to build on Sunday's dominant win. And in college football, the new college football playoff rankings were released last night, with Oregon staying at the number 1 spot, followed by Ohio State at 2, Texas up to number 3. Penn State and Indiana close out the top 5, and that is your Horn headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn headlines. Let's dive into the college football playoff rankings. They came out last night, and the Longhorns find themselves 3rd. That's where a lot of folks had predicted the Longhorns would be, behind Ohio State at number 2. Oregon is the number 1 ranked team still in the college football playoff. You have, after the Longhorns, Penn State at number 4. Indiana at number 5. Yeah, so you end up with the Big Ten having 4 of the top 5 teams. That's probably a little unexpected. BYU is at number 6. They had Tennessee at number 7. Notre Dame is at 8. 9, you have the U. Miami, Alabama is at 10. Ole Miss 11. And they have here Georgia at 12. But it looks like, Boise State would end up being, if you go look at the seeding of this, looks like Boise State would make it in, and Georgia would be the first team out, because of the way they have it seeded. Seeded and ranking are different because we're talking about the playoff. Texas would be the 2 seed here. So Oregon would be the 1 seed. Texas would be a 2 seed. BYU a 3 seed, and Miami a 4 seed. Giving Texas the bye. Giving Texas the bye, and you'd get a 12 versus 5 matchup. Boise State versus Ohio State. 9 versus 8. That's Notre Dame versus Tennessee. 11 versus 6. Ole Miss versus Penn State, and a 7 versus 10 seed, which would be Indiana versus Bama, and Texas would play the winner of that matchup based on the latest rankings that came out. Interesting news, though, in the we talk about the college football playoff rankings. Obviously, things are going to play out here. There's no question about that. But if you're looking at the big games coming up this weekend, because there's some huge games now, of course, after looking at the way these college football playoff rankings have been set, the Tennessee game. The big news coming out of there, and I don't know if Tennessee has confirmed this, but Chris the Bear Falica said it recently on one of his podcasts that Nico, the starting quarterback for Tennessee, has a concussion. Oof. And against Georgia, he's not expected to play.
That's no good.
Yeah, so just looking at their ranking right now, it's possible they lose that game, and then Georgia's right back in it.
Yep.
Just the way things are shaking out. And by the way, this is the first time Georgia has not been in the top 10 in the college football playoff rankings since Kirby's first year. So they might just be bumped right back into it. The way Tennessee can still win that game with a backup quarterback. Not saying it's not possible, but not very likely if they're going to be going up against a Georgia defense without their starting quarterback. So keep that in mind. I think Texas is in a great position. I know there are some people that are making the argument now about Texas' strength of schedule. I agree. Texas' strength of schedule is weak. It's one of the weakest among the top 12 teams. It may be the weak. I know Indiana's has a really weak strength of schedule. The argument doesn't matter if Texas keeps winning. It's not even worth discussing to me unless Texas keeps winning. Now, if Texas loses another game, all right, you know what? Strength of schedule. Let's talk about it. It will come back to haunt Texas, guarantee you, because they don't have a quality one. They don't. All their wins right now are all those teams have disappointed and underwhelmed. So they don't have a quality win. I think the best win is the Vandy win right now. Just looking at the way the teams have played, I believe that's your best win so far. A&M will be a good win if you beat the Aggies. When you beat the Aggies, Arkansas still necessarily won't be a good. It'll be a tough game, but it won't be necessarily a quality win. So they don't have a win against a top 25 team right now. And so none of it matters if you just follow the old Al Davis, all right, quote, and just win, baby. None of it matters. Just keep winning. But yes, the argument for a strength of schedule, I know some Longhorn fans have, been essentially defending themselves on social media because teams are coming after them because of how bad the strength of schedule is. It ain't good, but it doesn't matter. Yeah. If they keep winning. Now, if they lose another game, okay. Then you're a 2-loss team then strength of schedule will matter. Comparing your resume to somebody else's resume. Right now, I don't even think it matters. I do think Texas is legit a top 4 team in the country. I think they're the real deal. They just haven't been tested. Indiana's in the same boat.
Yep.
Indiana's the exact same way. Indiana looks good, but Indiana has not been tested. They will be tested, of course, before the season is done, just like Texas. And to get a quality win, they don't have a quality win either. But all their wins, they look really good. That's basically how Texas is. Texas doesn't have a quality win, but all their wins, they look really, really good.
No, and I mean, yeah, because you can always have these arguments that goes back to the Big Ten, and you go, well, you're overranking the Big Ten because there's 4 good teams in it, and then a whole lot of garbage. And so these teams play garbage all the time, and then they play another team, and you go, well, that team's 9-0. And you go, well, they haven't played anybody. You go, well, they played each other. You go, okay, but that doesn't mean they're necessarily great, because if they're only undefeated because they're all only playing bad teams, and then they play against each other, it's not as big of a deal. So I think that there is more parity in this year's college football, so it's a little bit harder to look at. But yeah, for Texas, you do get a weird finish that you schedule the defending national champions, you schedule a lot of good teams, and it just doesn't end up being that way, that you basically have one big game and you come up short in it.
Oklahoma's having a down year. That's usually one of your best wins of the season. They're down. Like you said, Michigan historically down. We didn't know Michigan was going to be this bad. We knew Michigan was going to be this bad. Well, after they lost everything, we knew they'd be bad. But we're talking about Michigan probably going to end the season, 6-6, somewhere around there? Oklahoma might not make a bowl game.
Yeah, it's crazy.
To think about it, I mean, that looks like they might be a 5-7 team. So yeah, it's just sometimes, that's the way things happen. You control the controllables, right? Oh, this is a Tom Herman quote that came out of my mouth there. Control the controllables. But that's essentially that's what you have here with Texas. I mean, what can you control? Well, just go keep winning. And really, you don't. Yes, it would help to do it in a dominant fashion, so that you also have, the added factor of, the beauty pageant, right? Of being able to win games and look good while you're doing it. All right, so you want to have that aesthetic, if you will, aesthetic appeal if you're Texas, while all looking good the whole time. But at this point in the season, man, you just win those games. Yeah, you may fall, they may drop you a spot or two, but they can't drop you out of the top 5. And once you win the SEC, it doesn't matter. You already get your built-in bye by just winning the SEC. So, and if you go to the SEC title and lose, I still think, you're in. I mean, I think some people are saying a 2-loss Texas, then you have to go back to the strength of schedule. That very well may be the case. I think Texas is too sexy to pass up with 2 losses.
I get. There's also a lot of people who are having this argument solely in the fact that they hate Texas, and their basic concept is a 5-loss SMU should get in ahead of Texas because screw Texas. I get that there's going to be arguments that anyone with 1 loss is better than a 2-loss Texas because look at their schedule. But then you say, okay, we'll take every ACC team out, every single one of them, take them out.
Yeah, I mean, I get the haters.
I get it, but I'm just saying, if you want to take real teams, take ACC out. They don't get teams in then because all of their strength of schedule is garbage.
Yeah, I mean, that's just ultimately why you shouldn't have rankings until midway through the season anyway, right? Because we overvalue these teams and we overrate all these teams and we underrate certain teams, and we don't really know a damn thing about these teams at all, especially with the transfer pool and NIL and the way we have no idea how good these teams go, especially with the teams getting new quarterbacks every other year and the quarterback kind of really renaissance that's happened because of the transfer portal. You can go get you a QB. You don't have to be in quarterback hell, quarterback purgatory anymore as a big time program. So I'm with you. I just think ultimately for the debate, I think that's mostly what this is all about, just having the debate about it. For Texas, yes, I will agree. Strength of schedule, it is weak. There's no doubt. I would readily admit that. But still, 2 things can be true at the same time. Strength of schedule for Texas is weak. Texas is still easily one of the top 4 best teams in the country. Yeah. I've watched enough college football to tell you that. And whether they get another loss on the schedule or not, I'm not saying I predicted they'd go 11-1. But if they get another loss on the schedule, I still think they're going to get into the playoff. I think Texas is. Every other schools, they do have to be concerned about whether their resume. They'll find a way to justify getting Texas in. And will it be giving Texas, giving Texas perks and benefits that other schools wouldn't get? Yes, of course. There are other schools that are going to get that too. Like Miami's strength of schedule, they want Miami in because they want Cam Ward in.
Yeah,
like exactly. You're going to see the committee is just trying to get the best 12 teams in. They're also trying to get the best 12 teams that also have the best chance for a competitive product or the best product as well. And that's why last year, Florida State, they can just by getting it's like, hell no, I'm not letting you in with a backup quarterback. You're not getting into my playoff. You're not gonna stank up my playoffs, all right, with your backup quarterback going in there. So I think they've already set the precedent. Stuff like that will be considered, and I think they'll take it even further and go, you know what, that team's got a better quarterback than this team. Y'all both got same amount of losses, but they got a Heisman Trophy win on this team, so we'll take them.
No, and I mean, Colorado would have to win the Big 12 championship, but they want Colorado in.
Oh, they want Colorado in so bad. They're rooting for Prime right now. Everybody's rooting for Prime. Yep, I agree. They're rooting for Prime. The college football playoff committee wants him in. Oh, yeah, no doubt. Totally agree. Because you got Travis Hunter, Shadir Sanders, and Coach Prime. Oh, that'd be beautiful. I'd much rather have them in than BYU. And honestly, the truth is, I think if I had to choose, but if I saw them in obviously they met up in the Big 12 title game. I got to look at the Big 12 standings. I haven't really checked them out. I think Colorado controls their own fate though at this point.
Yes, they do.
Winning.
Yeah, BYU 6-0 in conference. Coloro's 5-1.
Yeah, so if they keep winning, I believe they control their own fate. And they don't have to play BYU, right?
No, they have another easy schedule. That they basically played. Kansas State is their one ranked opponent that they beat.
And Tech was one of their last big games that they had left.
Yeah. They have Utah, Kansas, and Oklahoma
State. Yeah. And Oklahoma State's not good this year.
No, it's a 4-5 Utah, a 3-6 Kansas, and a 3-7 Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State could surprise because Gundy's going to put. Where's that game? That's the question. Is that game?
That's in Colorado.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, I know some people were down on Colorado. I had already said, I don't know how the hell you can be down on Colorado. And you remember me saying it. I said it multiple times. How the hell can you be down on Colorado in the Big 12 when they have the best quarterback in the conference? They're the only team in the conference with multiple first-round picks on their team, and they may have the best overall player in the country too. Yeah. How the hell can you people like, they're not even gonna go bowl game? I'm like, they're gonna make a bowl game. What are you talking about? What? How can you say that when they have the best quarterback? Anybody else who had the best quarterback and the best player in the country on their team, and they were different players. All right. And you would say they're not going to make a bowl game? Like, that is, I was like, you can be a bad coach. Deion, I wasn't even saying Deion was a good coach. I do think Deion's a good coach. But even without him being a good coach, guys, that's just talent. Talent prevails. Y'all's hatred for Deion in Colorado was seething at the time. I'm like, are y'all real? I'm talking about intelligent football mind. They're not gonna make a bowl game. They're not gonna make a bowl game. I'm like, well, yeah, because they don't operate the way you want them to, and they're not humble. And you don't want them to be so brash and cocky and arrogant, and you don't like the fact that Deion's rapping and Deion's leading the team out and wearing sunglasses during his interviews. I know you don't like all that, and that's fine. But don't let that cloud your judgment of football, guys. Like, that was crazy. And now everybody's like, they're a surprise team of the season. I'm like, no, they're not a surprise team. They had the best quarterback in the conference and the best overall player in the country on the teams. They were different players. How in the hell could you say they weren't going to make a bowl game? Now, I didn't have them win in the Big 12. I will say that. But I was like, it's ridiculous. I think they're not going to compete in that conference. I said, they're definitely going to compete in the Big 12.
I thought they would compete in the conference. I thought it would take them a little bit more long to gel just because of changing that team up so much in a year. I didn't think that was necessarily going to work as well as it has.
That's true.
But that was basically the main criticism.
That's not happening now a lot of different places. That's not like a Deion.
But the amount of change he had and how it came through of these guys suck, get rid of them, I want new guys. That seemed like a model that wasn't going to work as well as it has. I'd still bowl game, but I didn't know if they were going to be, they could be in the playoffs conversation.
No, I did not. I wasn't. I didn't go that far.
Yeah.
But I was like, they're definitely going to be able to compete in the Big 12. Some people thought they'd get like mollywopped in the Big 12. I'm like, it's the Big 12.
It is.
It's the Big 12.
And it's also a really down year for the Big 12.
Yes, I'm saying, what's up year for the Big 12? 2008?
Well,
you know what I mean? Like,
this is like when there was at least Kansas was good for a few years and Oklahoma State was good for a few years. Like, so there was teams that were good, and now all those teams are bad now too.
Yeah, but then there are other teams that are good, like Iowa State's good and BYU's good. Like,
yeah.
there are teams that are gonna, I get you though. The usual power, especially Texas and Oklahoma being out, they haven't actually dominate the ecosystem of the Big 12. Yeah. So I'm with you on that. But I always thought Colorado was going to go into the Big 12 and be just fine. I know a lot of people thought they were going to be able to mock and ridicule Deion at this point in the season. I thought that was crazy. All right. So there you go. A little college football playoff discussion. We come back. We'll go behind the burnt orange curtain, talk Texas versus Arkansas. Time to get to know some of these Arkansas Razorbacks and some of the main players. Also, a bit of an injury update. We know the first injury report or availability report will come out today for the SEC, and then we'll get to that probably tomorrow. But there is a key figure, one of their best players, you could argue their best player, who's been dealing with an injury. They just came off a bye week. We'll give you an update there. And then we'll talk about the Arkansas Razorbacks. All of that more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get to some Texas football conversation. Talk about the Arkansas Razorbacks, who will be coming off a bye week. So that, number one, makes them dangerous, right? Anybody coming off a bye week. Coming off a bye week at home versus, their biggest rival. So you're talking about their biggest game of the year, arguably. I don't want to speak for Arkansas fans, but they do, hate Texas more than they love themselves. So their Super Bowl coming off a bye week and coming off a game they lost, and not just lost, they got whipped. Like, I guess you can. I mean, that's their worst loss of the season. They got some losses it's got to be. They lost 63-31. I haven't looked at their schedule, but I can't imagine they got losses that were as bad as that. So that makes them dangerous, in my opinion. That makes them dangerous. Like, that is, coming off, like I said, embarrassing loss like that. That was a lot of shame that they were working through in that bye week. I know this because I've been there. Not in that situation like during the bye week exactly, but coming off an embarrassing loss, I get. So that's why, I think for Texas and the emotional charge, we've talked about that, right? Talked about that earlier this week. It's going to be an emotional charge. There always is with rivalry games, but especially when you're rekindling after so long a conference rival. But obviously, Sark has experienced this before in 2021, so I don't think that will be as much of a factor as it usually is. It's not going to surprise this team. You got 11 guys that took that trip with Sark in 2021 that experienced that Old Testament style butt whipping. You have 9 of those guys that are starters now, like starters for you, so they can stand up in front of all the young guys in that room and say, hey, this is how it's going to be. This is how it is. This is what you're going to experience, and they won't necessarily, in my opinion, I think the players, they won't be surprised about and it's at 11 a.m. as opposed to a night game, which it also was. They won't be surprised by how hostile and how emotionally in charge that environment will. I think they'll be ready for it. So that to me is that's a good sign for Texas. But one of the things that I have talked about at least early on with this Texas defense. I don't think they have a weakness. Like, I don't think there's a weakness. I'm sure you can attack them and make some plays on them. There's no doubt we've even seen that. But nothing consistently that you can identify as systemic. Like, this is, last year, it was pretty simple the way you attack Texas defense. You attack the DBs, inside breaking routes, and attack with the deep ball down the field, the vertical shots. Boom. We all knew how to attack the Texas defense. You couldn't run on them, but you can throw on them. This year, you guys know if there was a weakness, I would have identified it by now, and I would have been tracking it and giving it to you guys. There is no real weakness. They're not a perfect defense. All right. They're not the 85 Bears or anything. All right. But I think they are the best defense in college football. But they will be tested. This is the most explosive offense. And I said this yesterday. It's the most explosive offense they're going to face. Honestly, in the regular season, they haven't faced an offense this explosive, and I don't think Longhorn fans realize how explosive the offense is. I mean, it's top 5 most explosive offenses in the country. I mean, it's 3rd overall in 10-plus yard plays, 5th overall in 20-plus yard plays. Texas has the best defense at limiting explosive plays. Texas is number 1 in the country at explosive play margin at plus 54. So Texas is in a good position to defend this really explosive, dynamic offense with the dual threat ability of the quarterback. But like I said, they have not seen an offense like this one. And I'm really excited to actually watch how this defense performs against an offense like this. So Taylor Green, by the way, he's dealing with an injury, or at least he was dealing with an injury, got nicked up in the Mississippi game, the Ole Miss game. And in that game, they had Malachi Singleton come in, who they had come in before. He's actually also a dual threat guy that's pretty dynamic. But when Sam Pittman was asked about the injury, he said Taylor practiced every day last week during the bye week, and he says he'll be fine. When he was asked whether Malachi Singleton, whether he had trusted Malachi Singleton if he had to play versus Texas, he says absolutely. He said he did a great job of throwing the football, throwing it early, very accurate, ran over some people. Malachi played extremely well, and we're glad we have him and have a lot of belief in him when he goes in the game. So they don't have to change the offense when Malachi Singleton comes in, or if Malachi Singleton has to come in the game. And I've seen him a couple of times. Taylor Green is definitely more dynamic, but so, he's going to play. There's no doubt. It's a big game. Their biggest game of the season. There's no doubt he's going to play. Jaquindon Jackson has been out of commission for them for the last couple of games. Remember, he was committed, or actually went to Texas his freshman year and transferred to Utah, and then switched to running back while he was at Utah, then transferred to Arkansas, and will start off the season as their lead back, averaging 5.7 yards per rush. And then he ended up getting banged up, and they've been going with a committee of still talented backs. I think I told you guys versus Florida, and Florida proved me right. That was the best backfield, just talent and depth overall, the best backfield Texas has faced, the most talented backfield that Texas had faced. And that was even without Montrell Johnson, who will start the season as their bell cow running back. Well, I think Arkansas is just as talented as Florida in the backfield, maybe even more, especially if Jaquindon Jackson plays. They're not as sure about Jaquindon Jackson and his injury. He's dealing with an ankle injury. I believe the injury to Taylor Green was a knee sprain or something like that. But Braylon Russell, who is also a really talented freshman, and he's huge. Braylon Russell is a guy that has kind of taken the load. He's 250, 6'1", 250, just a grown man as a freshman. He has taken on the burden of the running game. They also have a guy, Rashad Dubinion. He's averaging, both these guys, Braylon Russell's averaging 6.5 yards per rush. Dubinion's averaging 5.8 yards per rush. They have Rodney Hill is another player that they sprinkle him in the backfield as well. He's averaging 5.2 yards per rush. And then you throw in Taylor Green, who is a dual threat at the quarterback position, and you see why that backfield and their running game is so explosive for them. And then on the outside, they got a receiver, Andrew Armstrong, who, in my opinion, you're talking about one of the top 3 best receivers in all the SEC. He is top 3 in the SEC in top 3 in yards and receptions in the SEC, and I believe he's averaging over 100 yards per game at this point. And he's huge. He's 6'6". Got great size, is explosive, got really good hands. I mean, he's the best receiver Texas has faced all season long. There ain't no doubt about it. If you look at 10+ yard receptions, he leads the SEC top 10 nationally in 10+ yard receptions, and 20+ yard receptions. He is tied for 9th, and leads the SEC. I mean, he's a problem, and they usually keep him on the outside, which for Texas, Texas got the best cornerback duo in the country. So for Texas, I think, they have the best, situation to match up with him no matter where he's lined up. I believe, he's only got like 28 reps from the slot so far this year. So they don't put him in the slot a lot. I think the way they're going to break tendency in this game, or at least if I was them, I would put him in the slot. He has 28 slot snaps. His highest slot total was 7 versus Auburn. And why would you put him out there with Jahdae Barron, the best cornerback in the country? Why would you put him out there with, Malik Muhammad, who I think still is an all SEC corner? I don't know if he'll be first team, but he might be second team all SEC cornerback because he's been that good. Why would you put him out there with those guys when, and I'm not picking on Jalen Gilbo, but you probably could, that's a more favorable matchup for arguably your best player versus Texas's, is 7th, 8th best defender, maybe 3rd best coverage defender. I think that's what they're going to do. Now, maybe they decide that's, they're going to keep Armstrong outside and have their best versus your best. I think that's ill-advised. It's not a wise move. If you want to look for favorable matchups, so I bet one of the things Bobby Petrino does is put him in the slot. I bet he has more slot snaps versus Texas than he's had all season long in any game. That's an easy way to break Tennessee. Now, if you're Texas, this would be a great way to win Jahdae Barron the Thorpe, or at least get him to be a finalist. I think he's already going to be a finalist, but you can move him inside. I mean, Jahdae Barron plays nickel. He played nickel last game in the slot corner in your nickel package. They moved him inside. When they go that nasty dime, the NASCAR dime, they bump him inside to play the slot. If they decide they want to put Andrew Armstrong in the slot, I would bump him inside and either put Gavin Holmes out there at the corner. You can move Jalen Gilbo out there if you want to. and just have, Jahdae Barron kind of shadow him. If he's on that side, then he can just, if he's in the slot, have Jahdae Barron go there, and then have Jalen Gilbo bump out to nickel. They've been bump out to corner. They've been cross training all these guys, or put Gavin Holmes out there, put Kobe Black out there. Kobe Black's been getting some critical reps in the games. I think that is an adjustment Texas should be ready to make. Because if I am Bobby Petrino, I'm trying to hide my best player and find him favorable matchups, not just line him up out there against Texas, what may be the best player on the best defense in the country. Like, they're work smarter, not harder. I think that's something that you'll see as well. And that's really the juice of this offense, right? They have a backfield that you're going to be forced because of the quarterback run game, the +1 in the run game, and because of how explosive they can be. You pack the box and you stack the box. That makes perfect sense. But then you're going to leave one of your DBs on an island, potentially one-on-one with Andrew Armstrong. And Texas is a team that can afford to do that and they'll be able to win. Just going to be interesting to see what strategy Texas deploys against Andrew Armstrong, because they haven't faced a receiver that really requires gravity, requires you to know where they are all the time, and requires you to roll coverage to them or allocate resources to try to stop them. This dude, Andrew Armstrong, is one of those guys. And that tight end's actually pretty good. He's not bad at all. I like that tight end, Luke Haas. So he's got some size on him too. They got some bigger receivers. That's something you'll notice too about Arkansas. Bigger receivers. This might be the biggest group of receivers that Texas face in terms of just the size on the outside. Guys are like 6'6", guys are like 6'4", 6'3", bigger frames on the receivers. And I think that's for a guy like Taylor Green, who likes to move around, keep the plays alive, scramble drill against big receivers. Sometimes that is somewhat problematic, right? Because they get you out of position, you're chasing down receivers in a scramble drill, you just throw it up to your guy, jump balls, guys trying to box you out with big bodies. That's something to watch for in this game too. All right, there you go. So get to know some of the more impact players for the Arkansas Razorbacks on the offensive side of the ball. We'll talk about their defense a little bit too, but they only got a couple of players, and they're on the front that Texas needs to be concerned about on defense. But if Texas can get time, they can really exploit this Arkansas secondary, just like Ole Miss did, who threw for over 500 yards. One of the receivers set career records in receiving touchdowns and in receiving yards versus Arkansas. The Longhorn receivers are probably licking their chops watching that film. We'll talk about that coming up later on. But first, let's get to the break, and we'll come back and we'll have we'll get into the topic for the Big Fat Poll of the day and the musically themed day of the week right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Baby's coming back on the horn.
Back on the Rodcast here on a Wednesday morning, and that means it's a one artist Wednesday, and today's artist is going to be Styx. It is James Young's birthday tomorrow. He is a guitar player for Styx and one of the only members who's been around basically the entire time of Styx. So we'll be playing Styx songs for you all day here today on the show. Let's get to the big fat poll of the day. Text line's open. 512-447-3776 is your text line number. And you can get this. Also, we'll have this posted up on X at the Horn ATX.
Patrick's big fat poll of the day on the Horn.
All right. Big fat poll of the day today. How many points will Arkansas score against Texas? How many points will Arkansas score against Texas? We know recently they've been putting up some big numbers at 58 against Mississippi State. Even in a losing effort to Ole Miss, still put up 31 points in that game. They got blown out, but did put up points. But in some other games, if you look at that Arkansas game, I believe that was the game that you saw Jaquindon Jackson go down in. And he only gets 5 carries in that game for 26 yards. They only run the ball for 38 yards against LSU and only get 10 points in that game. So that one was a big one for how you slow down this Arkansas team, take away the run, get a lead, and they will, when you make them have to be one-dimensional, it takes away a little bit more out of this team. Only had 17 against Texas A&M in that loss, but have been pretty good at scoring the ball this season. So we will give you a couple of options, 0-9, 10-16, 17-23, and 24+, if you think that Arkansas will go. The interesting part about this is, I think this falls into the category of really, if you think Texas' offense is going to put up 45, 50 points, then that 24+ may be an option. But if you think the game's a little bit closer, I don't think that Arkansas gets the points. But if you say something that happened akin to last week where there was some late points to kind of put on the board, that maybe you could see Taylor Green put up some points late and get you into that. But I feel like that's really the main way they get 24+, personally. Other than that, I would say it'll probably be closer, that 10-16, maybe that 17-23, depending on what you think.
Yeah, I think right now I'm at really can is just the dual threat ability of, that +1 at the quarterback position. And they have that. They got Taylor Green. He's one of the best in the country. He's one of the leading rushers at the quarterback position in the Power 4. And Texas have played. Pavia was a dual threat quarterback. I'm talking about a true dual threat quarterback, not the kid they played, Michael Hawkins for Oklahoma. He wasn't a true dual threat. I mean, he could barely throw the football 10 yards downfield. And so now talking about a quarterback who's vertically challenged. Diego Pavia is probably the best version of a dual threat quarterback Texas seen, and he made some plays against him. And so that's the question: can Taylor Green, when Texas does have a really effective defensive call, when Texas initially can take away the play, and when the play breaks down,